Hey Ron, how are you? Listen, thanks a million for joining us this morning. It's great to get to sit down with yourself, and I kind of created a little bit of momentum behind this interview during the week. So I suppose, firstly, how are things? How are things with you? How has it all been?
Very, yeah. It's not the holiday we all want, but look, we have to make the most of it. It's good to, we're all falling in love again with our wives and everything, and having great times with the kids and all that. So it's great, great
How long
again.
is that going to
Great bit of
last, though?
time. Forever, of course, forever, definitely.
Not too bad. Look, I suppose it's a good one to point out that, as I mentioned earlier, it makes perfect sense to sit down with yourself. I mean, from a personal and professional point of view, the relationship that Powers have with the Swan Bar, you're a big advocate for the brand, and it's fair to mention the LVA as well. Powers have been there from the word go as well, and one probably, if we're being real, wouldn't exist without the other. So I know it's a really, really great outlook to have on the questions that are coming in from yourself from both kind of angles here. So again, appreciate it. So I suppose it's, pubs, the closure getting announced and stuff like that. But how does someone like yourself set up for when the word comes out that it's really indefinite? No one gave a timeline, etc. So, like, what's the plan of attack really from when you hear?
Yeah, well, I think we'll know a lot more next week when the Taoiseach makes the kind of State of Nation and address to the nation, or State of Nation address to the nation. I think we know a lot more then, as regards the pathway to opening. I think it'll be we should have a bit of clarity then, and when we do open, I think there's a lot of speculation there about, this, that, and the other, but I think we don't really have a firm grasp of what's going to happen. I think we will have a bit of a lead-in time. My understanding, I think, from what I've read, officially is that there's going to be kind of stages of the economy opening up, and we'll probably be, as we were first to close, you probably one of the last places to open. Yeah. So I presume we'll have a bit of a lead-in time, and I would assume that lead-in time just will give us the opportunity to get the pubs ready, get them deep cleaned, put our new kind of standard operating procedures into play. We have to up our game in certain respects in order to satisfy what the customers want going forward. So I think that there'll just be changes to the way we operate, and I suppose we'll be concentrating on that in the week or two leading up to pre-opening, I suppose. That's what I foresee, but I think there's just a huge amount of speculation out there. I think we will have to probably, there may be, obviously we'd all have to open the pubs at full capacity, but it seems to be that we will be opening up under some type of social distancing restrictions, which is not ideal because it does kind of leave a bit of, some pubs that mightn't make sense if they're very strict, and others that might. So we don't know, but as I said, it's all speculation at this stage.
Yeah, that's kind of, I suppose, seamlessly leads into the first question. So the questions were sent in via Instagram. I just posted during the week, and I thought at the time it just made sense to put out something like this because there's, as you say yourself, there's so much uncertainty around it. And one of the first questions that came in was, number one, I know is a very hard question, like when realistically could we, put any sort of ballpark time frame on it? And second of all, do you see it opening in kind of a staggered approach? I know we spoke before previously about, a percentage of your overall capacity, etc. So, I mean, what way would you see that working, and how would it work if that was the case?
I think it's going to be a nightmare if they're going to open up under social distancing, given that every pub in the country has a different kind of layout and format. I think it's very hard to get one hat to fit all. And if they make it too severe, I think a lot of places won't be able to open up if they're on a reduced capacity level. So yeah, it's a big challenge for everybody across the board. Yeah, I personally, when if you asked me at the start of this, I thought we'd be open in mid-July, maybe longer, but I kind of felt mid-July is when we'd be open. I think that there'll have to be a trade-off there'll have to become a kind of a break point where we can say, right, we have the levels of infection down to such a number, and the mortality rate has decreased to such a number that we can kind of get back to kickstarting the economy. And I think it's marrying, obviously we have public health concerns operating in pubs. We have to be concerned about our staff and our customers, and everything has to be weighed up and put into the equations. A lot of unknowns, a lot of swings in the equation. So we just have to see where it throws us out. But you know, I definitely think it'll be last to open, probably anywhere from, I would think, from early July to maybe, you know, whenever, that's September. But I hope, like there was comments out there the other day saying that the pubs will be open for the year, you know, at full capacity, and I hope that's not the case, because I think we need to, you know, it's a great Irish product, and I think people
Yeah.
want it back, you know.
And that becomes apparent when you see the likes of the posts on Instagram, how close they are to people's hearts. You know, the videos that came out at the start, you know, they kind of clutch at you a little bit. Even walking through the city there, like a couple of evenings, obviously everyone wants to get out of the house and keep within a safe distance, etc. But 2 kilometers takes me just into the city, and to see the pubs closed, it's absolutely bizarre. You know, it's you probably take a lot for granted, the pub tradition being one.
Yeah, and it's disheartening to see so many, like, you know, iconic buildings, like, you know, a lot of them are beautiful buildings, and they're all, like, you know, look disheveled and stuff as well, and even shops around town, like, it's a bad vibe really for everybody. It really is. But look, hopefully we will talk about it in years to come and go back and laugh about it. That's what I'm kind of hoping. I hope we just get through this and kind of solve as much of the problem as we can and move on from it, and that's what we have to do. And also to say, like, another thing that I think is really relevant here is, like, we'd have a strong link with the Royal College of Surgeons there, and, you know, there's a lot of kind of guys, you know, medical and, you know, science and, you know, professions that come into the pub, and you kind of have to have the utmost faith in them. Like, when you put all their kind of, you know, thought process, they're all focused on solving the coronavirus, and I think there will be kind of, you know, medicines out there that will suppress the coronavirus. They mightn't, you know, vaccinate against, but they learn how to deal better with it going forward. And I think if you weigh that into the equation, have a bit of faith in that, I think that could be a kind of unknown factor that could have a big impact on where we're going with the coronavirus, hopefully. And I think I kind of feel that could be something that we're not really taking into account, that we can deal with it better going forward.
Yeah, good stuff. Nice one. Positive enough. So a couple of I'll fizz through them as they're coming in there. Second question I have there that came in via Instagram: are there any measures being taken to specifically help the smaller independent pubs to ensure that they don't close permanently? So obviously, you know, we're talking about the smaller capacities and smaller.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, the obvious one there is the government wage subsidy thing, which is great for everybody, because that just keeps our staff in place at the moment. And I think that will need to be, you know, maintained, even if social distancing applies. Like, if you're not going to open, they should kind of carry that on, and because you're actually doing what's right for public health. So I think that definitely should be kept on. I mean, obviously the commercial rates, I know that is in, you know, being reviewed, and my understanding is, now it's not kind of concretely said, but I think my understanding is that's going to be written off. So it's not going to be deferred, it's going to be written off, which is a big thing too. I think the banking, likewise, similar to the wage subsidy, you know, the banking industry have been great, worked really well with every business in the city or in the country really, and they have kind of given a moratorium for 3 months now. Ultimately, we will be paying it back moving forward, but look, it gives people a bit of breathing space. And most importantly, the suppliers, like, have been fantastic. Like, they haven't taken direct debits, and I'm sure, you know, they realize that, you know, it's a difficult time for businesses, and those businesses that are struggling, you know, if they're not going to be open, there's no point in taking the direct debits, because that's just starving working capital. So I think you know, that level of support, you know, will keep people going. But I just think, you know, moving forward, there is talk of various initiatives to get, you know, the businesses given a bit of working capital going forward. I think there's a lot of that, again, is in the planning stage. Nobody knows what shape or form it'll take, whether it'll be grants, you know, low interest loans, you know, payable back over, you know, to medium term. Something like that could help and just get people over the hump. Like, because I think businesses, like, are not about, you know, the next flipping month. They're, you know, it's a 2, 3, 4 year cycle, and guys are growing their businesses, and we're going to be in the doldrums here from anywhere. Like, I mean, we're going to be domestically, I think, focused if we do get open, say, till Q3, Q4, and then Q1, Q2 next year. I think we start seeing a return of the tourists. Hopefully the confidence will be back. And I think we have a big challenge in that confidence space to get customers back in, but that's not really answering the question. But I think that, yeah, look, there's a multi-level of support that businesses need, and I've kind of gone through them, but I think, you know, we just have to batten down the hatches and kind of, you know, work together with all these kind of interested parties to try and get to where we want to be, which is opening up the pubs and all small businesses in the country.
Yeah, I suppose the last thing you want to happen then as well is, like, some of the stuff you hear on the news last night, even that, you know, these measures reintroduced again because of complacency, or, you know,
Yeah.
so I suppose it's better nail something like this down properly the first time, and then kind of snowball or build on it. You know, I think
Yeah.
that's probably
Yeah, it is. Like
that's
it is. And I mean, like there's other people, like just to carry on from the last question we're asking about, there's other people that have rents, and like their rents, they're like landlords are very different and kind of, you know, spread out. So some are institutions, some are individuals, and like everybody has to reach a happy medium here. It's not going to, you know, we have to work together for the greater good, and that's what we have to do. And you know, I think by being kind of under lockdown, if that's not the term, but under restrictions, we have to kind of work with that and kind of get you know, the result, which is getting back to full open economy ASAP. And, you know, we have to take a bit of pain, I think, to get a bit of gain in the future.
Yeah, too right. Great stuff. So we the next one there. So as I said, all these filtered in through Instagram. It was our friends at Dublin by Pub that sent in a couple as well. So appreciate that. What's been done to assist pubs who have repurposed or diversified their business during this whole crisis? Probably, I read this one myself a couple of times. I guess what the guys are saying is, you know, is there, you know, pubs that have maybe started doing the beer deliveries or the food or stuff like that. I mean, does this just literally fall with them and, you know, kept them trucking along, or will there be something done to help these guys?
Yeah, well, I think they're doing enough to help themselves and realize that they have a space there, they have a market there, and they're working as much as they can. Now, my kind of, you know, issue with that is that, like, well, I mean, you could kind of trigger, you know, people looking for payments, like, you know, your suppliers or your banks or your insurance companies or whatever. There could be various issues with that. So you got to kind of tread carefully on that. I mean, ultimately, the support will come from their you know, their customers, and they have to be rowing in behind them, you know, and giving them as much support as they can. And that's it. Like, I mean, I don't really kind of understand what he means, like, when he says what support can you give them. Like, I mean, the support comes from the customers that want their product, and that's as far as I can see. Like, I mean, obviously, you know, people, I mean, the support, I suppose, people will be giving them is kind of highlighting it on social media, you know, what they're doing, you know, they're kind of what they're offering. And, you know, but like, I mean, like, you know, Jeff from the Headline is doing a lot of craft breweries. Like, you know, other guys I know Dara in the Comet is doing strawberry daiquiris by delivery. There's other guys, you know, so there's various things. A lot of, as you know, like a lot of the pub groups are doing food just to keep things ticking over and keeping people in employment. So yeah, there's, you know, I just think that, you know, they are getting as much support, you know, around guidelines as to what they can and can't do, I suppose. But I think ultimately, you know, people just got to row in behind them and give them that level of support.
Yeah, I suppose kind of, in speaking about that, I mean, versatility is kind of one thing that came to the fore through all this. I mean, you had even from you know, guys implementing measures to be able to do the takeaway food and, you know, adhere to all the measures, as well as the likes of distilleries, even our own Middleton, you know, churning out hand sanitizer as well. And it was very, very admirable of all those distilleries, big and small, that made that move. And I suppose it'll probably change the way, the sooner we can get back making whiskey,
but you need to adapt. Yeah, you need to adapt and evolve your business model as you move forward, and that's it. Simple as. Like, I mean, you know, like, we don't know what the pub is going to look like or what the landscape is going to look like when we do open, and we've got to evolve, you know, our model to suit that when we go ahead. Customers, you know, rule the roost. Customers walk, you know, or they stay, and you've got to determine what makes them walk or stay, and that's what we have to do. And I mean, like, a lot of these guys opening up is brilliant, and if they can pay a few wage bills and, you know, pay a few overheads and turn a few bob, best of luck to them. But I mean, I definitely would be a big advocate of what they're doing, and I think it's great to see, because, to be honest with you, I would think that the standard of food in Dublin pubs is far superior to a lot of restaurant food, in my view. And I think I don't think it's really recognised for it. But I mean, you know, and it's better value. It's a lot healthier than a lot of the fast food. So it's kind of a happy medium. It's seen as a happy medium. So I think people should be supporting it.
I saw some queues for a popular fast food chain last night that opened in Galway on social media, and there was queues of up to 45 or 50 cars. So who knows, maybe we'll see 50 or 60 cars.
Hopefully that's the same with the pubs. Absence makes the heart grow fonder, you know.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but the question here, how can the drinking public help support the pubs at this time and moving in towards, you know, when they open again and stuff? Like, how ideally, you as a publican, would you see the help now, and and when we do get the doors open again.
Yeah, well, look, like, I mean, like a lot of the guys that are opening at doing the food and doing the off licensing, or, and some guys are, doing a bit of, other kind of organic stuff, like they're selling other items on their premises they normally wouldn't be in their remit. Like, all those kind of stuff should be supported by the public as much as they can. The guys like myself, like, I'm kind of closed, so I can't really repurpose my building, or I haven't come up with a solution that warrants me to repurpose the building at this stage, or the format of the pub. But I think that when people do reopen, I think the important thing is to support them. And it's not about, one night. It's not about, the pubs are open today, let's everybody charge down the pub. That won't work, because we're going to be under a kind of a strict kind of new regime. So I think that the idea is to kind of, come in at other times and kind of support as much as you can, whether it's after work going for a pint with a friend, or, but like spread it out over the weekend. Like, the pubs are not about Friday and Saturday nights. The pubs are about, they're open 7 days, and like they should be supported 7 days a week. And we kind of need that just to keep everybody ticking over. And importantly too, like, I mean, this is all about jobs, as well. Like, I mean, there's 50,000 direct, and there's a lot of people supplying food. Like, you can go to the pub for lunch, go for your dinner, go for a coffee in the morning, meeting somebody. Like, I always find, if I'm going out and I'm meeting somebody, I never go to a coffee shop purely on the basis that you go into a coffee shop, there's always people, chatting, very loudly. Generally, they seem to all congregate. It must be the way that coffee shops operate. But you can go into a pub and sit in a pub and actually get a bit of peace and quiet and talk to somebody in private. But generally, pubs are a lot quieter in the morning time. So, I mean, supporting the pubs, morning time coffee, the afternoon coffee, lunch, dinner, whatever, and during the day, I think that's really what we have. And just making, kind of spreading out your visits, really. I think, I genuinely love, like, I wouldn't be a big drinker at home. I never do, but I love going to the pub and having a few pints and, a bit of crack and a bit of chat, and hopefully those days will be back.
Yeah, the social aspect is kind of, I suppose, it's one thing
that's what it is for me. The bit of divilment, it's not
wrong with the divilment, the silver lining could be coming back, having those couple of early evening drinks, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, well, that's what it's about. Like, life is for living. If anything that this crisis has taught us, is that life is for living. So we should be out there enjoying ourselves.
Yeah.
And no better place than the pub, in my view. I think, like, I always enjoy the aspect of a pub because you can float. If you go out for dinner with somebody, you're kind of stuck in a table. I like kind of sitting in a pub and kind of, you can move around and you can talk to several people. Well, you used to be able to talk to several people, but, you can have a bit of fun and float between you. That's important to me.
Yeah.
That's why I like the pub.
Yeah, exactly. Fingers crossed, same as myself. We got one here. Are there any safeguards being considered to protect against possible vulture buying of struggling pubs? This probably was a factor in the past, but is it inevitable that this happens, or
market forces? Like, you can't really kind of, market forces are market forces, and you can't really turn around. Like, I mean, unfortunately, I think there is going to be casualties. I think a lot of peripheral pubs, will suffer in light of what's happened, and those that were kind of, treading water will close. And I mean, I think that was really poignant. Like, I was in the Department of Health the day that the closure was announced, and we were there, and it kind of hit home with you when you're going to bed that night. This is 7,500 pubs, and it's 50,000 jobs, and you played a part in this, and you're kind of going, Jesus. And like, you're kind of saying to yourself, like, these pubs, a lot of them won't open. And I love going down the old small road, like down in rural Ireland, and seeing a pub. And my wife's not a big drinker, thank God. Don't encourage it, but she always drives, and I say, here, come on, we go in here, and I bring the kids in, and we sit down and whatever, have a couple of pints. And I love those pubs. Like, that's it. And unfortunately, as a result of it, a lot of those pubs may not open again. I think there is potentially, obviously those pubs wouldn't appear to vultures, but funds, but those pubs may reinvent themselves as restaurants or something going forward. And vulture funds, I think, would be more into the bigger kind of scale pubs, or better located pubs, say in the cities. That probably may happen, but I don't think it'll happen for a while, because I think that, look, there's a team effort here, and hopefully everybody can put on the green jersey and get people back. Now, obviously, we're going to take a hit, but I think that hopefully, like, my focus is, as I said, domestically focusing on what happens, with our customers till Christmas, and then moving back to kind of tourist mode, domestic and tourist mode in the first half of next year. And hopefully, like, we have had a slump, we've had a hit. The rainy day funds are being delved into. in order to keep the show on the road. But I think, like, if people work with their banks, and banks, everybody works together, I think, hopefully that won't be the case.
Yeah, and you might have to get a cinema screen in maybe for all these bumper back-to-back sporting events for next year.
Yeah, well, Jesus Christ, well, yeah, potentially. Hopefully,
you'll see every type of sporting fan from a horse racing fan right the way through rugby.
There's going to be a lot on, like, it really is, and it could be crazy, But I think, look, people, at the end of the day, I think people, like, if you're an economist looking at this, I think people will be a bit kind of conservative. They only have so much money to spend, so I mean, having bumper days kind of is fine, but I mean, it's a lot of it's overhyped. And I think people only have so much to spend. So I think it'll just be a slow kind of return back. I expect a bit of a kind of initial kind of bump when we get back, but obviously that has to be married with whether social distancing is implemented or what form of it is put forward. And then I think people will spend conservatively for a while, and then kind of hopefully it'll return to normal at some stage.
Great. Happy days. Sooner rather than later is right. Bit more lighthearted. I had a question in about the Swan Bar and where the name originates from. I know there was a discussion online the other night, and we've had this discussion with Manny the group, I should say, that has passed through the pub, about the Swan actually being on the tiles on the floor to indicate where one was, essentially. But is there a reason that the Swan came to be?
Yeah, so the bar is there since 1661. Okay. So it's probably one of the oldest licenses in Dublin, and in a nutshell, there is a Swan River, so that's one reason. But that's one association that it has, which flows up around Cup Street, I think. And then the other one is that there is, and all these rivers are boxed off in Victorian times, so it's called the Swan. But the real one that I believe is that where the name comes from is basically back in 1661, people couldn't read. Yes. So all pubs, everything was named after symbols. So some bride spark stuck a picture of a swan up outside the pub, and the pub is known as Ye Old Sign of the White Swan, and that's where the name came from. So we actually have the Imperial War Museum in London. I'm sure you've read been in there reading a few books. As you do. We got a guy to research it, Eamon Casey, ex-Irish press journalist, and he went in and he said that this actually was there. So it was actually just the way pubs were named. So a lot of, like, the Bleeding Horse would have a similar kind of history, I presume, the Black Lion, and all these pubs that would have it. And that's why you go into the UK, the Dog and Duck or the Fox and Geese. And these pubs were named after the symbol. So it was basically to do with a literacy thing. People couldn't read. So if you saw a picture of a swan, you knew that was the Swan then.
Yeah. Very good.
Likewise, you would have had people, like, there would have been signs for barbers, like, the red, blue, and the white thing, and that meant it was a barber. So people, it's a symbolism of it.
Similar.
We're very bright fellas here.
We are all very intelligent.
I just have to look for the picture of the Swan, see where it is sometimes.
Depending on how long of a day it's been, how many rugby matches have been on. So coming back to the Swan as well, I know there's a big tie to the rugby there as well.
Yeah.
And our very own Shane Davey messaged me. He said you've got a couple of good stories about the British and Irish Lions, and the rugby tie there. So you've got a lot on
so
that.
The rugby, the rugby tie would have been like my the pub's been in my family since 1937, and back then the family lived over the pub. My dad would have been born and reared over the pub. I lived over the pub for a while when I got married as well. And we all went to school up in St. Mary's in Rathmines, rugby school, played rugby, and Dad was handy enough at rugby. He would have played for Leinster for about 10 years, captain for Leinster for 2 years. Then he would have got picked to play for Ireland in the early 70s, and then he got picked to play in the British and Irish line. So it all kind of happened. Meanwhile, he was the first bar owner to be picked to play rugby for Ireland. So obviously, I think the big kind of crunch was that St. Mary's, which was a kind of a relatively I suppose new boy in the block was a rugby club would go. They would have won the Senior Cup in 1969, which Dad was the captain of. But surprisingly enough, Joe Flanagan, who's the Undertaker across the road, he won it in 1957 for the first time at Mary's. And then across the road, like my dad, and he worked in Flanagan's obviously. And then my dad, being the Swan, he won it in 69. So it was a big deal. So as a result of this kind of momentum, I became a big rugby kind of haunt as a result. And I suppose Dad would have played and like he would have been on the only Lions team to beat New Zealand over there in 1971, the only team to beat them over there. So there was always a massive, you know, connection with the rugby. Now, back then, my dad used to suffer a bit with his nerves. So the night before a match, he used to kind of say, well, listen, we'll skip off and go for a few pints. So dad used to go off for a few pints. So basically, we had a situation where, and even I remember, and funnily enough, Irish Distillers used to have a night for the Irish rugby team in Smithfield, like, which is the Jameson distillery back then.
Okay.
Back in the day, but they shunned that because they came into the Swan anyway, and the whole Irish team. So when I was a kid, one of my first memories of working is carrying up a tray with like 8 pints of Guinness, and my dad in front of me, and the two of us bringing them up. We had a little snug area at the front there, and the Irish team would be sitting there having their pints, and they got very superstitious. They had to see these two old women had to be sitting in the room, and if they were there, they won, and if they weren't there, they lost. So then it became a real riot of things. So this went on for years, and then there was the rollover. So then in the Sunday morning, the Irish rugby team used to come in. So the bus would pull up, or they'd walk over from the Shelbourne, and the opposition team would come in. So like when I was growing up, when I was probably 12 or 13, starting my days off working in the bar, I would be dealing with, like, you know, 2 international rugby teams on a Friday and a Sunday morning. So it was absolute mayhem. And then, like, there was all these, all during the years, like, you get, like, you know, greats like Barry John, Gareth Edwards, you know, John Spencer, JPR, all these guys would come into the pub as a kid. So, like, you know, and it's just there's always this kind of association there. And, you know, even up to today, like, I would say, get a lot of guys, if they're kind of, you might get a guy, if he's injured or he's off, he just kind of shoots in. And I'm not going to mention any names, but I mentioned the older guys because I mean, a lot of guys would come in and have a quiet pint and sit down. So there's a massive rugby connection there. We've had, I think, in the Guinness, or the English Rugby Union old fire bus pulled up outside the pub one night. So this is the RFU committee, and they all came in. So it's just, look, there's a massive symbolism there. And, you know, I suppose it's been there. I suppose a lot of stories about stuff you probably, you know, it would, as my dad would say, would remain in the tabernacle. So we leave it at that and we just say nothing. But a lot of great times and great memories for me anyway, working the bar business. It's what the bar is about, really.
Exactly. All the stories.
Yeah.
And the
last but not, Shane Davies getting nothing out of me. He's getting nothing out of me. Tell him.
He got his speak in anyway.
Yeah.
And our friends up in Searson's bar were wondering what your favourite rom-com is. Funny enough.
My favourite?
Yeah, I don't know what they know about you, but...
Flip it. Rambo. Tell them.
Rambo.
Yeah, Rambo. First Blood. Tell them First Blood. That's my famous.
Rambo First Blood. Happy days. I'd be happy to hear that.
I'm sure Bill, yeah, it's very nice. I really appreciate that one. Jeez, he's a very funny that fella, isn't he?
Put you in the spot. Well, Ronan, listen, I really appreciate you taking the time to fizz through it all. It's absolutely great to hear you in good spirits, and fingers crossed we'll be in for a whiskey or two when it all blows over. Yeah, no, look, I have to be very positive and think that we're going to be back. You know, I think it's just, look, it might be a bit of a changed landscape, but we have to be positive and concentrate on getting back. And I think another aspect, Dave, a lot of people in the business, I think it gives us time to just think about our business and where we're going, and kind of, you know, I think it will become evident what we're going to open up to, you know, as the time comes closer. Yeah. And I think we will have time to actually, reimagine our business for the customers and the customers' new kind of behavioral patterns. I think we got to work on that, and I'm sure, look, we'll be back. I think it'll all be, hopefully it'll be a short enough thing, and hopefully we'll work on it and get it over the line. Please God. Yeah, of course. Stay positive. That's the message. That's the message, baby. That's the message. Happy days. Ron, thanks a million again. We'll see you soon. Appreciate it a lot. Thanks a lot. Cheers. Bye-bye. Cheers. See you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.